everybody, my name is Adri and I'm doing this video because what I have gone through in the last year has been totally insane, and I would never want anybody to have to go through what I went through and figure it out yourself the way I did. So I'm hoping that this information reaches people who it might be helpful to. My story is basically how a sudden onset of severe migraine headaches that turned into chronic headaches and lots of other neurological symptoms led to me discovering toxigenic mold in my house. And the doctors were completely confused and had no idea what was going on. I went to the doctor several different times. I went to the neurologist. Nobody knew what was going on. They were really quick to give me migraine medication, but nobody ever thought to check to see if I was having any type of toxicity issues. So this first video will be about my story and how I came to this discovery, and then I plan to do videos throughout my recovery and throughout our remediation process as we figure and navigate our way through this whole system. So my story basically starts last August when I had my first severe migraine headache. We moved into the house in May, and beginning in August is when I had my first severe migraine. It was a migraine with aura, and it had severe visual aura, and as soon as the aura subsided, I had an opposite side headache with a severe confusion. I was unable to understand language or speak very well after. It was called aphasia. I also had this bizarre sensation that my limbs were much shorter than they were, which is really weird, but it's called Alice in Wonderland syndrome, and it can alter your depth perception. So that was my first one, and then after that, I started having them more and more frequently with more and more symptoms. So it went from being once a week to twice a week to lasting for 3 days and having them 3 or 4 times, new onsets per week. And I started having symptoms like tingling all down one arm, tingling in my back. The aphasia was really common when I couldn't understand language shortly after the onset, or I was unable to speak very well. Then I started experiencing, I had scalp tingling, pain in my back. I started to develop a tight nerve pain around my rib cage in October, which has still not subsided. I have it 24 hours a day, and tingling in my back, my arm, and my head, which those symptoms are still here as well. I started having this second type of attack. So those were my migraines. And I became very familiar with them, very familiar with their symptoms. Like I said, they got to the point where I was having them every day by January. I was even beginning to have more than one aura in a day. I would joke that my migraine just had a migraine because I couldn't even track it on my migraine tracker because it wouldn't allow you to track an attack on top of an attack. This second type of attack that started would be, so the migraines were always unilateral. I would get the aura in one eye and then the headache in the opposite side of my head, followed by whichever fun symptoms came with it. The second type of attack was bilateral. It always started at the base of my skull, and it felt like an electric wave that would pass over the top of my head to the front, and my neck would immediately lock up. And then it was followed by intense confusion, like not even understanding what was what for a short period of time. So I would get a series of these over a period of a couple of minutes. And right before these would happen, I would get this general feeling of complete anxiety. And I think it's because somewhere deep in my brain knew what was coming. It knew that this attack was about to happen. And I knew that there was nothing I could do to stop it. Immediately following these, I would get the extreme confusion. Like I said, not knowing, have complete disorientation. My neck was locked. I would be in a lot of pain. I would have to usually lay down on my back, try to regain control of my breathing, which was all over the place at this time. So the first one of these attacks happened in October. And then by mid-February, my migraines started to be replaced by these attacks. So I was having these attacks on a daily basis. It would take me a long time to recover from these attacks, and then I would just, boom, get hit with them again. Then probably about 3 weeks ago now, I was rushed to the hospital after coaching at a gymnastics meet. I had what we believe was a seizure, which felt very similar. The onset of it felt very similar to the second type of attack that I had described. Only this, instead of like it passing over my head, this felt like it was passing straight through my whole brain. I was completely non-responsive. Everyone around me said it lasted close to 2 minutes. I felt like it lasted about 30 seconds, but when I came to, I couldn't talk at all. I actually felt like I was completely stuck. I had to really breathe my way down just to be able to tell everybody around me that I thought that it was over. Rushed to the hospital. They said it was seizure-like activity. So throughout this whole process, I've been getting all the tests. I've been getting blood drawn, MRIs, EEGs, and everything's been coming back normal. So I've been doing my research. My neurologist wanted to start me on, he did put me on propranolol first, which didn't really do much at all. The attacks just kept coming through the propranolol. And then he was trying to put me on Topamax and Zonegran, which were 2 other migraine medications. But something deep down in me just knew that that was not going to solve my problem and that there was more going on, because I just kept asking him, why 9 months ago was I totally healthy? And I could feel my quality of life deteriorate. These headaches took over every aspect of my life. And like I said, chronic pain, chronic fatigue, absolutely feeling like you have no control over what's going on in your brain. And I just kept asking him why. And he said, well, we're looking for primary factors or causes of these headaches, but a lot of times we just don't know why. Well, that just wasn't enough for me. So I just kept digging and kept digging and kept doing my own research. So finally, I found the only thing that I could find on the internet that could validate what I was going through was on biohacker Joe Cohen's website. I found an article that talked about neurotoxicity in the blood-brain barrier and how a sudden onset of migraine headaches ultimately could lead to seizures due to a compromised blood-brain barrier. So I sort of tagged this word neurotoxicity in my notes. I tagged the whole idea about the blood-brain barrier being compromised, but still I was sort of clueless, like what could lead to me having neurotoxicity. So my next step was I was reaching out to some of these migraine gurus who run these giant Facebook pages with thousands and thousands of followers. I had a free consultation with one of them, and I couldn't afford her. She was very expensive, but during our free consultation, she mentioned that one of the first things she would do was test me for heavy metal toxicity. So there again, I have the idea of the toxicity issue. I marked that down, kept it in mind, couldn't afford her. So then I reached out to a local naturopath doctor who had similar qualifications to her, couldn't get into his office anytime in the near future. And for me, the clock is ticking because I just feel like it's getting worse and worse every day. I don't know what's going on. So I reached out to him, couldn't get in, watched the YouTube video associated with his practice. And in the middle of the YouTube video, I see him discussing that he had cured a woman of migraine headaches and severe neurological symptoms because he found that her bedroom was above her garage, and her garage was releasing toxic chemicals into her brain or into her bedroom, which was causing neurotoxicity. This sort of rung the alarm for me because my bedroom is also above my garage. I also learned from our next door neighbor that the woman who lived in the house before me also had severe migraine headaches, completely disabled, was unable to work, and that now that she's been out of the house for several months, more than a year actually, that she's been doing much better for herself. So my heart was racing. I felt like I was really onto something. And then all of a sudden it hit me. During our housing inspection, the housing inspector had showed us in the garage that there was, he called it an old mold stain. And he told us that it was dead and that it was testing dry. And he thought it came from an old roof leak and that the roof had been fixed and that you could tell that it was dead. And he kept showing us with his meter that it was testing dry. And he said you could tell it was dead because the coloration was pink and that it was in the garage and shouldn't be much of a concern. But if we wanted to have another specialist come out, we could. He let us know that that could be pricey. So we were first-time home buyers. We didn't know any different. And we decided that we would just go ahead with the purchase of the home because he said that it was dead and that it came from a leak. So right after we had moved in, I knew that he was wrong about the source of the leak because when we first moved in, there was water dripping into the garage floor. It was a stormy day. I saw water on the floor, walked back out to the driveway and looked up and noticed immediately that that leak was coming from the master bedroom window. So, hold on, give me one moment. So the leak was coming from the master bedroom window. Now, that year was really, really stormy for Colorado. So we immediately ordered new windows and we were on a 12-week wait due to a massive hailstorm that we had. So over that period of 12 weeks, we were doing everything we could to keep the water from coming into that wall and dripping into the garage. We were not so successful in doing so. And in August is when we finally got the installation of the new window. Now, when we got the installation of the new window, it sealed all of the moisture that had been coming in all summer long, which creates an airtight environment for mold to grow. So when I started putting all these pieces together, I ran downstairs with my ladder, climbed up the ladder, and sure enough, that whole section that had been pink before was now black. So I immediately knew something was wrong. I knew that that's what was causing this toxicity issue in my brain. I could feel the threat was imminent, and so I made my whole family go stay in a hotel that night. We called a mold specialist. They came out immediately the next morning. They confirmed my findings. I had to hire a separate professional who's called an industrial engineer, and they had to come out and test the exact species. And he came in and he did confirm that we had toxigenic mold, and that was in the garage. And when he pulled the carpet back in the master bedroom, directly underneath that window, the whole tack line of carpet was completely black with white spores. So we knew automatically that we had a problem. We've been out of the house for a week and a half now, and I have not had any migraine headaches since then. I have not had any of the second type of attack either, those waves that I had talked about with the locking neck. I've done a ton of research on mold toxicity and mold illness, which is helping me to understand my remaining side effects, my remaining symptoms, and how we are going to go about treating them. I'll do another video on the next step in the process. I am very lucky to have a very open-minded primary care provider who has been impressed with my ability to do my homework, and he has gotten me started on cholestyramine, which is the binding agent that is the first step in the process of eliminating mold out of your system. We are under professional remediation for the mold in our home right now. We are just going through this whole process. We're only about a week into both of those things. So this is going to be my first video explaining how I got to where I'm at, and as I go through the process, I will also do videos concerning at each step of the process. I put links to any of the sources that I talked about today, about things that I've learned, and also a link to my Gofundme page. If you do see this video, please share it. And if you have any water damage in your house, please get on top of it immediately because you do not want to be in the boat that I am in right now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll stay tuned for a new video. Thanks.